Welcome to Creators Cafe. I'm your host, Jessica Payne. I'm a performer, performance coach, and multi-hyphenate creator. I'm going to be bringing you conversations with some of my favorite creators where we talk about the sublime and the specifics of the creative journey. So grab a drink, get cozy. Let's go. My guest, Carolina Alvarez, is an actor, filmmaker, producer, and podcaster. She co-founded Femme Regard Productions with Tessa Markle. They started creating short films, which were successful and won multiple awards. She and Tessa have now co-hosted 16 seasons of the Femme Regard podcast, which gives upcoming filmmakers valuable resources while highlighting women creators. Now, Carolina is in post-production on her first feature film, Sync, as the writer, producer, actor, and director. Her feature has been awarded the Women in Film and Sundance Institute Gender Balanced and Equity in Production ReFrame Stamp Award. Carolina has also worked in post-production, overseeing the mastering and localization of films for Warner Brothers and Disney. Now she is working as a creative director, developing her next projects, and preparing Sync for the festival circuit. Across all of her work, she champions developing filmmakers and creating opportunities for women in front of and behind the camera. Please enjoy my fantastic conversation with Carolina Alvarez. Carolina Alvarez, welcome to Creators Cafe. Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming.
It's a delight.
I appreciate you. What are you drinking today?
I'm drinking an iced vanilla latte because I'm basic like that.
I gotta say, I was inspired to also be basic with you, and it's delicious because I love iced lattes, but I try not to get syrup in them, and I just had it today, and I was like, nope, this is great.
It's just, you can't go wrong. It's a classic drink. Just a little sweetness.
Yeah, from Dialogue Cafe, family owned, fantastic.
I love a family owned situation.
Yeah.
I think earlier we were chatting that this whole vibe is giving Solar de Cahuenga.
Yes.
Which is the cafe next to AMDA, and every AMDA alum at least knows, you spent time writing scripts, reading scripts, having coffee.
Exactly. I didn't tell you before, I actually was having a conversation with a friend while I was there. I met up with him, and that's how I got the job ultimately at AMDA. I was like, I had applied back when I was in New York, but I know it's, late September, and so maybe I'll try again next year. And, this was right after I moved to LA. And he said, no, we're on the trimester, and so apply. And a week later, I had an interview, and a week later, I was teaching. It was the fastest thing of my life. It was crazy. It was so just the right time.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I love it when things like that just propel. You're like, I didn't expect this.
No.
You're actually thinking the opposite. You're like, man, this is not.
Yeah, this might happen in a year. And no, it was exactly meant to be. So it's perfect. Yeah. So we were talking, we didn't really cross paths at AMDA, but no. I was on the acting faculty there, and you are an MT alum. So welcome and congrats. It's just so funny to me because I just know you from out in the wild from mutual friends.
It's a little special when you meet someone from AMDA.
Yeah.
Because it's not as known as it is in New York. It's a flagship out there. That's the flagship, right?
Yeah.
And then here in LA, it's newer. So every time I meet someone, I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's like a mini community, so it's cool.
No, it really is.
Yeah.
And feels like many, many moons ago for me.
Yeah,
About 8 years ago now.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So what do you think about when you think about yourself as a creator? What are some of the titles that you give yourself? Because I know your history is you started as an actor, but you are doing so many things so fabulously.
Oh, first of all, thank you.
Yeah,
thank you for saying that. It's a really great question, and it kind of relates to how I selected my degree in musical theater. I consider myself a multi-hyphenate, wearing all the hats and doing all the things, but also my inability to just pick a lane and stay with it. I just can't do that. So when I decided on musical theater, it was because I couldn't decide between acting, singing, and dancing. And I quickly learned that, after I graduated, that pursuing Broadway is very intense. You have to love every bit of that, an aspect of that, and I just didn't feel like that was my course. But still, I'm like, I love doing all these things, and I think I've always had that creative bug to go and create my own stories. I just didn't realize it was going to be film, was going to be the medium that I was going to thrive in. And I think it kind of birthed from after graduating and pursuing acting and quickly learning that this roadmap of auditioning and like feeling not empowered by the roles that were offered to me at the time, I was like, I need to go take control of my career myself and find my own way to get through it. So it's where the different roles started to come about, of writing and creating, soon to directing and acting, all the things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. And it is definitely something that you start to notice when you're not the person that's creating the work. You have very little control over what kind of work you're being matched up with, even as an opportunity or a possibility for an audition.
Yeah.
And I think the more we can kind of craft our own fate, the more you feel proud and encouraged of what you're doing as an actor. And it feels like you've got real leverage in your field, which is so great. You've talked about kind of the journey right after school. Do you mind talking about what your first steps were before you got into everything else that you did?
Yeah, let's talk about the plumbing situation,
yes,
shall
please.
we?
Yes, please. Because I grew up on a dairy farm, so I've shoveled manure, so I am not afraid of hard work, but I also know how like one thing that doesn't look like it has any kind of fit at all then ultimately helps you down the road.
1000%.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest takeaway for me starting out, quickly, as I mentioned, learning that the roadmap of, picking up a part-time hostessing restaurant job, it's what most of what we're taught to do, or like that's like the roadmap that's painted to us when we graduate. Is like, okay, get like this restaurant job so you have the flexibility to do auditions. And I quickly learned that it wasn't a great fit for me to pay my bills and not be stressed out. But on the flip side, I was stressing out because I felt like I wasn't doing the actor's work of auditioning all the time, which I'll circle back to. But I transitioned from hostessing to a full-time job in sales at a lighting, plumbing, kitchen appliance showroom. And it turned out to be more than just a sales job. It was a project management job because I was liaising with not only homeowners, but the contractors, designers, learning specs, had to stay within budgets, chasing timelines, especially keeping track of all the different moving parts of like their orders, because it's not just the pretty stuff that they were ordering, it was the valves they had to match. So it was a plumbing language that I learned, but the skill set was ultimately project management, which is key for producing.
Exactly.
And I didn't realize that. I was just kind of down on myself a lot because I felt stuck at this golden handcuff situation where it was giving me the stability I need and helping me start my projects, funding stuff for like what became Desert Flowers. And I was taking acting classes at night, so I was funding myself that way too. And that's where I met my co-producer. That we eventually collaborated from there and made our first little Western short, Desert Flowers. So I think it sometimes in hindsight looking at that, everything serves its purpose, and you just need to know when it's time to tap out and like level up. So I'm grateful that there's some hard things that happen in life, and you're like, wow, like the pandemic, when I did lose that job, that I'm like grateful for, because it was time for me to move on from that role and really like continue to do other things. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you go from that role, and then you meet your partner Tessa, your producing partner Tessa, in the acting class. And what kind of propelled you to make that first short? Was it just the kind of advice to create your own content? Is this something that was an idea that had been brewing for you before? Where did that first one come about?
Yeah, in acting class, the number one thing you're being told is to go out and make your own content, your own work, tell your own stories. And, you know, I was sitting with it and I was like, yeah, like I don't love anything I'm auditioning for. I really can't audition anymore right now. So what's a better use of my time? Like rather than sitting around and waiting for the opportunity, like let me go out and create something. And I hadn't thought to work with Tessa directly right away. I started, I don't even know how I found this other guy, but I started a web series, and then I brought her on to act and quickly learned, like, we make better producing partners, and, like, and we just had a meeting one day, probably at Solar de Cahuenga, and we were like, all right, what do we both love? Like, I just asked her, I'm like, what is it something that you are excited about? Because I feel like we have a connection here, like, and we learned that period pieces was something we were drawn to. I mean, thespians, of course. And, like, just, bonding on telling female-driven stories. And that's where we're like, well, we can't shoot in a castle somewhere here. That's going to cost way too much. So let's just do a Western because we're in California. It's deserty, like the landscape, easy. Horses, we can find them, no problem. And that's where we started the madness of Desert Flowers. Not really knowing anything, but yeah, ignorance is bliss, my friends.
Absolutely. And I know the first couple of shorts you make, you learn on the fly, especially if you, like both of us, you haven't been to film school, but you're still a filmmaker.
Yeah.
So first of all, I just want to say we're going to come back to your podcast, but I really appreciate that you break down so openly your process as you go through production. So shout out to Femme Regard Podcast, which we'll talk about more later. But I appreciate so much how you go behind the scenes and just talk through everything that you are doing in real time as you're doing it. Because as a beginning filmmaker who doesn't have a filmmaking community, you are finding everything out on the fly in the moment. So you made this huge, epic spaghetti Western short as your first thing out the gate. So you had drones, you had horses, you had a period pace, you had stuntmen, you had fights. What were your key takeaways from that process?
That if you dream it, you can go ahead and build it. Like, as crazy as it was, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done, like, for sure, but it's growing pains. So whether it could have probably not felt as intense, but probably to some degree intense doing a smaller project, right? Because it's the first time. So it's pretty crazy looking back that we did survive. And I mean, could have been a hard set just because it was the first time. So I think it's always like, hey, we learned like what not to do moving forward. Like maybe take a step back, start a little slower, like smaller, more contained than bringing in animals. Because that's the first thing they tell you not to do is like, don't work with animals and children. And like, of course, too, in the script, the first scene, I do have like a child, and I was like, okay, we're not shooting that, so let's just stick with the animals. But, you know, I was like, okay, this is like a way bigger project that deserves its time when we are more seasoned and know what we're doing more, so we can be better prepared and have, honestly, the funding and the resources. But, I think the biggest lesson is like, we still managed to do it, which is pretty crazy, and like pull it off. And you got to start somewhere. So even if it's crazy, you might fail, and that's okay. Because like then you learn how to better approach a situation than rather not even trying. Like being too scared to try, I think, is more detrimental to one's career than like trying and falling on your face a few times.
Yeah, and you still have an end product that looks really cool and is a calling card, and it establishes kind of a beginning tone and voice and kind of the sandbox that you want to play in, and it helps you to decide what you want to keep for the next one or what you want to adjust for the next one. So I think that's great.
1,000%. I really do feel like, I was like the start to finding my voice as like a writer and storyteller.
Okay, so then your next project, or the next one I know about, was the one that you did for the contest, and you actually got a little bit of help and you got to film on the lot. So can you talk about natural selection?
Yes, that was a really cool AT&T contest with Warner Brothers. And I had moved on after doing the crazy big Western project to focusing on shooting with your phone. So it was a mobile short centered competition. I was like, perfect. I don't need a fancy camera. I'm in. Let's figure out. I came up with this script idea because, and I mean, it's so long ago, I can't even tell you how I just remember it happened overnight, and I specifically was drawn to this WBMX writer. Shout out to Aaron. He's also known as Wheels. And, you know, I wanted to, again, be inclusive and find ways to empower, like, people who have other skill sets to shine and can be and take place as an actor. So I just reached out to him on the whim, said if he would be interested in being in my short, told him what the concept was about, and he was in. So I submitted the script, and we got him to fly in and do some really cool stunts. And he was he was really committed. It was just so fun. So, I mean, yeah, just getting to even work on these smaller, like seeing smaller but still pretty out there things come to life. It was, again, like all great building blocks.
Yeah,
to doing my feature. Because I think I mentioned this, or I didn't mention this, but I mentioned this on a pod the other day. I don't know, a lot of people like track my record, but I was a little intimidated that I went from the crazy short to just mobile shorts. And then I shot my first feature, which a lot of people I think would be like, no, you need to shoot a proper short film, because the Western was more of a proof of concept. So it wasn't like this full storyline piece, if that makes sense, because that would have been way too expensive.
Yeah.
But I know, I kind of feel like I got what I needed from those shorts, and I just really just trusted that I could pull it off with a feature now.
That's fantastic. Yeah. I love that you had the confidence to make that jump, because a lot of people actually go in the opposite order, right? They'll shoot little things with their cell phone camera, and then they'll think, okay, now I'm ready to move to something a little bit bigger, but they feel like they need to make that intermediary step of having a real budget and doing a short that, you know, many people will spend $20,000 to $40,000 on a short. And I love shorts, and they're a fantastic way to get known in the festival circuit, but no one's buying shorts.
Exactly.
Or, a couple of places are, but to take that same level of money and
make a feature
is incredible. So I really admire that you decided to believe in yourself and trust the skills that you had built and had that direction. That's really cool to me.
Thank you. I just want to be open and honest about it for anyone who also feels like a little insecure about it. Yeah. But I think you kind of just know what you can handle, and you got to just trust that. And I'm someone who's okay with being a little like in the unknown of, because I just trust that I will find a way to deal with hard things, because I did with plumbing and like crazy contractors, like dealt with the horses and the stunts going wrong at times. You know, like we could figure it out. It's not the end of the world.
And I think it's good to kind of figure out your personal balance of, you know, you shot the proof of concept with the horses and you realize actually that's not the feature I want to do, but I am ready for a feature now that I've got a couple of things under my belt. I just know that I want to
have it more contained, so I can eliminate that added stress that was there on set.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think that's really smart as you're kind of collecting different experiences to take what's working and put it towards the experience of the next one. That's really smart. Yeah. I also want to take just a moment to say I think it's smart that you had signed up for that contest, because I find when somebody's in the beginning of their career, that's such a good way to meet people and to give yourself deadlines and specifics that you might not think to do. Are there any other projects that you've done for contests or anything else that you've applied for like that before?
Yeah, Sync, the feature, that's kind of, it's not where it started, but I found quickly the year I started writing contest by We Make Movies. It was their first feature film fund competition that we became finalists for. So I right away, I was close to finishing it, and I completely agree. Having those contest deadlines and the potential to win, like some serious cash, they were offering, I think it was either $20K or $40K, something like that. Of funding still, I think it was $20K per 3 projects. So each project was going to get minimum $20K. I'm like, that's huge. That's like half our funding. Yeah. So I was like, great. Like, this would be a great opportunity. And we did really, really well. I'm really proud of ourselves. And I feel like it just made our pitch even more polished, which is another great thing about those contests. Like, you really learn to polish your pitch, have the materials. And so when we didn't win, ultimately, I was able to just use all those promotional materials and get right into fundraising like strategies. After I spent a little more time polishing the script, which I'm glad I did.
Okay. Yeah. Right. And again, it got you that far.
That's where it's like, okay, things don't happen, but they don't happen for a reason. Because like now I got to like polish the story even more, and now I'm like I'm grateful that we had the time for me to do that, because the story is just much better than if I had just won and gone with that, you know?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think it was such a great way for us to really polish sync and get it funded ultimately.
Yeah. So did you originally write it for that contest, or did you have a script that you adjusted for that contest, or did you just use the contest as a deadline and something to help you get everything, kind of the marketing and subsequent materials polished?
Yeah, so to clarify, I had started writing a feature, a low-budget, contained feature film at the start of the year. It was through, shout out to Noam Kroll and his Backlot community. Just, I knew I wanted to do that. And then I specifically joined his community to have like some accountability there.
Yeah.
Those are great ways if you're like on a path, like check-ins, how's everyone's story? And to talk about the aspects, or the elements rather, that you need to set yourself up to produce something at a low budget. Because if you're, again, trying to do a Western on a low budget, like, good luck. Like,
drones and horses and stunts and
like you could have maybe one horse and no one's riding it. Like, you know, like that's just where you're gonna be at.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, like contained space. So I was already, it just was kind of kismet then when I found out about the competition maybe in June or something, and the deadline was in August, something like that. So I was like, oh my gosh, I already have a story that I've been working on. So it just kind of fell into my lap a little in terms of like how I came about it. But I was already planning to do a micro budget. So again, I think it's good to, I mean, it depends, but I like that I knew already that I wanted to do something small and contained, and it was great. There's so many competitions out there that you could probably find to match with what your goal is, whether it's like a horror short or like a comedy short. Like there's a lot of competitions that really do, I think, fit a lot of people's goals, whether it be a feature or a short. You can find something, I think, if you look for it.
Yeah, perfect. And then just having that reason to get everything done by a certain date,
it's
but
so
also
great. And the possibility again
of winning.
Yeah, that's great. So
well, and being a finalist puts you in a different league for every step down the line as well, because that's saying it's not, oh, I have this script. It's saying I have a script that really holds up against the other ones that are out there. That's a big deal.
And I registered the script too on Coverfly, and it was at the top 10% of most discoverable projects. So I was really honored to also receive a couple accolades on Coverfly for the script.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Congratulations on all of that.
Thank you.
And especially you didn't go to film school and you didn't have a background in writing specifically as your training. So the fact that you're doing you're learning all of these skills in service of your own creativity is so inspiring to me. I love it.
Again, just do the damn thing. You'll figure it out. And again, like lean on your peers. I mean, I found people who are professional writers to read my script and tell me all the bad formatting. So I'm like, we want to fix this, or like, you know, a suggestion for this is a weird spacing. It's like, because I I took one screenwriting class and that was it. So it's so important, like, to, again, know where you're at, and then don't be afraid to ask for advice or for help. And I did that. That's like all I did. And I was very humble about not knowing anything. So I was like, just tell me what's wrong. I will not be offended. Like, I will fix it.
Beautiful. Are you ready to be confident and comfortable in front of a camera? Well, my name is Jessica Payne, and I would love to help you. I'm an actor, acting coach, and the host of the Creators Cafe video podcast. I have helped thousands of people to learn the skills of a Hollywood actor to be more comfortable in their body, voice, and mindset whenever you press record. So if you're an entrepreneur, a business person who needs to be in front of the camera, or you want to get into digital content creation, I would love to offer you one-on-one on-camera performance coaching so that you feel like when you press record, you can be your best self. Check out the link below for more details, and I can't wait to work with you. Let's have fun together. Talking about sync, what took you from writing a script to the actual production process? What was that like? What were you hoping it was gonna look like? And how did it actually happen in real life?
That's really funny, right? Because, you know, you dream up of a thing and you're like, can I actually get it to match, right?
Yeah.
What I have here on there. And I'm really proud to say it's pretty damn close. Like,
That's incredible.
It's actually, at one point I really thought it was gonna not look the same because of location. So we gave Saint, let's say it was, we did fundraising fall of 2022, and then we started the pre-production process January of 2023. Gave ourselves a hard 6 months, like of full-on pre-production, and we shot it that summer of July 2023. 11-day shoot. Majority of those 10 days straight in July, and then we had one final shoot day in the Black Void studio in August, just to give you like the timeline.
Yeah, that's great.
And then we began post shortly after in the fall of 2023 in September. So I think it's, you know, part of producing is coming up with that timeline strategy and speaking to it in your pitch process so people understand, like, you know, where your markers are. I think that's so important to have that plan, not just for yourself, but even to communicate that to others. So everyone feels like they know what they're signing up for when they're supporting you, right? And can follow along the journey. And I really appreciate to everyone who has supported us throughout this process. We have a mutual friend, Jake, who's our executive producer, who I brought on. And it came from him being one of the people who read my scripts and just showed such vibrant love and joy and passion, like that. I was like, this, if he's down, like, he seems like the person who would be fit for that role, having not done it before. Mm-hmm. And that's actually what led me to hire a lot of my team. A lot of them have not done a feature or even that role, but I saw talent and passion, and that's like, for independent film, so important. More than how, like, your resume of doing it forever. Like, then it just becomes a job, and that's totally fine and respectful. But with such a small budget, you want people who are gonna be there to have a good time with you. Yeah. Through the good and the bad, the ups and the downs of it, right? So that's the hiring process was a lot. But I learned a lot throughout that time, just onboarding people, really listening to my gut, like, if they have that, like, energy to be collaborative, to of course have talent and skills, but, you know, like, again, the personality fit was really, really important.
And everybody's got to get a start or do the thing for the first time sometime. I mean,
that's how I felt.
And it's interesting because you're the one initiating all of these projects. So I could see a lot of people in your position going with, everyone else has to have a lot of experience in this arena. Yeah. And I really admire that you took a chance on people, because that's how people break into a new role, is someone takes a chance on them. So thanks for taking a chance on people. That's really cool. That takes a lot of courage.
Thank you for saying that so beautifully. And I think it's so important, feeling like, you know, my directorial debut that we all like want this thing. Like it's not just my thing now. It's like everyone's part of it and wanting to shine in their own respectful way.
Yeah.
And I loved that so much about bringing on people like that. Yeah.
Beautiful.
But in terms of like securing locations, like that ended up, I put it on my vision board, matching like perfectly with what I had in mind for the way this sink would look. It was like to a T perfect of what I wanted. I wanted like a modern, bright floor to ceiling window downtown LA apartment with chrome finishes. Like there was chrome. That became its own like, thing to finagle with reflections and even reflections in windows. But, again, you live, you learn, you figure it out. But I was like, this is so critical to like the creative part of it that I was so glad, because for a time locations were kind of falling through or I couldn't get a hold of the people. And then this one, it always comes through in the very last minute. I was like, I'm out of options. Like, I don't know what to do. And then this location came across to us and it worked out. So like things like that. And the Black Void studio too. I was inspired by the film Under the Skin, and like Stranger Things was inspired by that as well, for that underworld void space. And I was researching like how they did it. And I needed a specific studio that had like close to like at least 180 blackout curtain or wall, like cyc walls, and a light source, either scaffolding to hang light source or just like a giant bright light source that was coming from the top. There was the studio we had this huge LED controlled ceiling that was perfect to be my giant bright light source. And, but that also, like, it took time to find that. So things take time. That's why you don't want to rush pre-production. So that's like, I think why we were successful is we gave ourselves enough time to handle those problems that initially always come up, Securing location is never easy, And if you're able to start writing a film with a location in mind, that's even better than if you kind of like know that's something you can obtain. It's a little less headache down the road.
Yeah. So in the process of this, you're the writer, you're the director, you're the star, you're the production designer, you're the location scout, you're in charge of the production management flow, you're all of the things. What lessons or advice would you have for somebody who is trying to also take the leap from, I've made a couple of shorts, I'm fine with doing all of the things, and I want to step into that feature, indie producer, director, star, all of the slashes. What advice do you have for people in that position?
That like want to do all the things.
That want to do all the things. That know they have the vision, they have enough of the skills to get started.
Yeah.
And they have enough people around them to realistically lean on if they get in trouble. What would you say?
That's a really great question that I'm excited to answer, because that is an answer I've been looking for throughout my process that I was like asking on my podcast, and I feel like it was hard to really get one. So to provide that now is really exciting for me. So I think the first and foremost is to have, as corny as it sounds, true belief in yourself, and knowing that you can handle difficult situations, and that you are going to build a team that will back you in those situations. So, because again, this shouldn't happen on your own, nor will it happen on your own, the making of a movie, right?
Yeah.
So just have some peace of mind that if you have the right team behind you, like, you will be able to not feel alone and lost in situations. So building that right team is so important. Like, I couldn't shout out again to Tessa, my co-producer, Sabine, my associate director, which I'm going to get into, and David, my DP. Like, that was like really my core 3 people that helped me navigate having multiple hats, like, you know, and tackling that. So understanding, it wasn't clear to me, but I kind of was like, I need to get an associate director. Like, it's just, when I was doing it on a horse, it wasn't working, you know, directing and acting, like that wasn't working. But not much is going to change from being on an animal to having to have limited time to get all the shots we need done in a day, because that's what budget allows. So I need someone who I can trust to be at the monitor and letting me know we're on track with the vision, or like, you're not going to be happy with this, like, let's reshoot this. Like, having that person you can rely on, I would say, is so key. And I would like highly recommend bring on an associate director if you are acting and directing, you know, or they call it a second unit director, like some other person that has another eye that you trust, that doesn't have an ego, that is going to support your vision. And it's just like a calm force. Like, Sabine is such a calm, like,
that's great,
kind, beautiful human that I'm so lucky to have brought on. Like, I just kept thinking, like, she's the person, and I'm really glad that I went along with that. So that's huge. And giving yourself grace, like, you know, that it might not be 100% perfect, but you're taking on so much. So congrats to doing that. And you can do better next time, maybe. Or like, learn, maybe there's a role you gotta let go. Like, it's okay. Like, you'll figure it out.
Well, I want to thank you so much for sharing, while you're still in post-production, sharing the working copy with me, because I know that's so scary to put out in the world, even in a private way. And I just want to say, it looks beautiful. I think for the amount of time and the budget that you had, you've done an incredible job. And it's such a good story, and it's so engaging, and it just looks professional. Everything's working. I'm excited for it to hit the world. So congratulations in all the biggest ways.
Thank you. I'm so flattered and excited to hear you say those things, because it is, like, I was sharing your like the under 10 amount, like, of people who don't know the project at all that I've been shared it with. So I really appreciate you taking the time and for saying all those kind things.
Absolutely. Nice. And I think it's also when other people get to see it down the line, hopefully it won't be for a while, because you'll have festivals and distribution and all of those fantastic things that you deserve.
Well, it's so nice that it wasn't the first question that you asked me was, when do I get to see it?
Oh, no. I hope that people don't get to see it for a while because it's so successful. But then when they ultimately do, I think it's a really wisely made film, especially since we've talked about kind of the challenges that you have as an indie producer of making something that you can make and get done and do it in a way that you feel proud of, and it looks beautiful and it's well executed. And, you know, we've talked about, you really had one location and then for one day a secondary location, but within that one location, you actually had an apartment. So you had multiple locations within that apartment. Yeah. And then you also were able to catch a couple of exterior shots. And then you also had, I don't know if you filmed it or if you had B-roll of like the city that you're incorporating and things like that. And so you kind of forget as a viewer that it is really a primarily a one location shoot, because you take us over so many locations and the mood changes so much and the music changes and everything is incorporated really well. And so it doesn't feel small, even though it had to be to execute it. I think you're just doing such
like my editor and my team, because that is truly like such a big compliment and achievement for us, because it was daunting to not make the film feel like this is in a one room like spot and we're stuck here and you guys now have to watch us for 90 minutes.
And I was sharing with you, I can get bored pretty quickly if it's one location and one look, and of course that's going to make it easier to film. And so you've really got to, as a creator, find that line of how can I create layers and visual interest without doing it at a scale that I can't reasonably actually execute it at a high level. And I know I have gone from one extreme to the other in trying to find that lane of like independent filmmaking being possible. And so it's so interesting to see how people are solving that kind of issue. So congratulations, it's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Love indie film.
Yay! Yay. And so I also want to just mention that I really like your podcast. So you've got your Femme Regard podcast, which has been out for 16 seasons, which is incredible. And I just love your mission of kind of bringing that behind the scenes of you learning indie filmmaking and taking all of these steps, combined with what you know of all of your kind of day job experience in production at that higher studio level, is such a cool insight into how the sausage is made. So I definitely recommend that people check it out, because I think if you're into indie filmmaking, it's such an amazing resource. Because like you said, when you're trying to do it for yourself, you're always looking for resources. They're like, how do I do this? And, you know, I listen to a lot of podcasts from even big directors will say, you don't really learn filmmaking in film school. You just learn the elements. You have to do it, and you have to experience it. So I just encourage people to like listen to your stuff, because I think it's it helps you to have the confidence to go do it yourself too.
That's what we're here for, baby. We just want to share as much as we know and uncover various, you know, department roles, and really try to have like the indie working filmmakers, because those are the ones, like you said, you know, until you're out there really doing it, you can't really harness the craft or get a grasp on it as tangibly as you are when you're just really working the set. And that can come at a PA level. I always say, like, PA, you will learn so much, or unit production management if you want a little bit more of a role, because when you're on set, you just build relationships so much more quickly than you would otherwise. So yeah, so I love having the show and, you know, sharing our journey in filmmaking and being really vulnerable was our number one mission, just to let people know, why haven't they seen this film yet? Well, there's a whole process.
Yeah.
So stick around. That was partly it, you know, to keep an engagement going with us in the work, because I think, again, like I was saying, the number one question I get is, when can I see it already? And it's like, that's just not how it works. It's going to take like another year maybe till like it's actually out, which is insane. But again, that's actually great if things are going well and we're doing festivals and talking distribution deals and all of that. So, we just want to bring on, it was a mission for us to especially bring on more women on the show and meet more women and talk to more women, because we didn't know anyone when we first got started. And I was like, I know my ladies are out there. So we just started doing the work, and I'm really, really proud of the community we've built, because, you know, men and women, they're all supporters. They're all great. Yeah. And it's fun watching the film, because you realize there's men and women behind the camera and on screen, but it's just, the ratios are just a little more flipped than standard. And so everyone is welcome, but it's kind of filling a hole that is very satisfying to get to see. So congratulations. Thank you. We're super proud of it. Yeah. So what creators challenge do you have for my audience? Oh, okay. Well, the one I thought of, I would like to tie it to how I came up with Sync and, you know, finding a contained story to do a low budget feature with. So my challenge would be, if you could come up with a storyline, a log line for a single location with two characters, what would that story be? and see what you come up with.
Yeah, and I didn't know when I first kind of got into indie filmmaking and making shorts, I didn't even know really what a good logline looks like. So you can just look up examples online of what a logline is, so you know what you're even looking for. And you can look up logline examples of existing movies. So look up your favorite existing movie and see how they described it.
Exactly. That's how I do. I still, like, when I'm coming up with new stories, have to do the refresh and have to, like, research loglines.
Yeah.
And all the time. So that's a really, really helpful tool. And, like, just think of the story first and then refine it with the log line. That's, like, would be my one advice. Because then you get two in your head. And for me, at least, I hate just coming up with log lines. Like, I need to kind of romanticize the idea, the conception a little bit, and then we can nail the turn of events.
I like that. Yep.
The inciting incident.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, because you want to, like, come up with the creativity first before you then try to refine it.
Yeah, my least favorite thing is when people are like, okay, challenge is come up with 10 log lines. I'm like, bro, but, like, no.
That's not how this works.
That's not how this works.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So give yourself something to be contained by, and that's what I challenged myself. That's how I came up with Sync, was like, gotta find one main location. What can I do with two characters being the leads, like, and that's how I started to figure out Sync.
Yeah, and it's so successful because of those limitations, which is cool. That's how it's supposed to work, but it actually does work like that. So congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks again for having me on the show and spilling the tea, the coffee.
Yeah.
I spilled some on myself a little earlier. You guys didn't
You
see
look
that.
great. It's fine.
Thank you. But
and where can people find you? What are your favorite places for them to look?
Okay, well, Femme Regard Productions. You can find us at Femme Regard on Instagram. Our podcast, Femme Regard Podcast, is available on all your favorite streaming platforms. If you are tuning to us on Spotify, you'll get to see video with audio for those video episodes. And then our YouTube will have as well all of our video episodes if you're interested. But of course, we're on the Apple, all of the goods. Our Sync, our feature, has an Instagram account called @SyncTheMovie on Instagram, and then we're on TikTok at Femme Regard TV. Not as active, starting to be again. And then if you want to follow me personally on Instagram, where I'm most active, I'm at La Femme Carolina. And
Perfect. And I'll have links to those in the show notes.
There's a lot, girl.
That's great. Yeah, you are. I think that it's worth looking at your sites as well as a good example of what you can do as an indie filmmaker to promote your own materials and just put everything in one place, make it look good, make it look pro, and just have it all there. Which a lot of people make the stuff, but it doesn't take that next.
You need a landing page.
Yeah,
you need the landing page.
You need to have the portfolio of your work for people to see it, and you do, and I think that's great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh
Cheers.
my gosh, cheers.
Yay.
Jessica. Appreciate
Congratulations.
you. Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
It was fun.
Join the community and share your creative challenges on Instagram and Facebook at Creators Cafe by Kika Labs. And also check out my website, kikalabs.com, KIKALABS.com, to sign up for the mailing list so you always know when a new podcast is released, and to check out my coaching and digital courses to help you be a more confident and joyful creator.